"Sir, your vertebrae are shattered. You may never walk again." The doctor's words hit me like artillery fire as I lay immobilized in the hospital bed, all because our HOA president created her own fake security force. What this power-hungry woman didn't realize, she just attacked a retired Army colonel with 25 years in military intelligence. I was about to use every strategic skill I possessed to destroy her operation. Most people in Oakwood Estates just knew me as James, the helpful old guy from Cedar Lane. They didn't know about my 25 years in operations I still can't fully discuss. At 70, I kept my military background quiet, preferring to blend in after a lifetime of service. After losing my wife to heart disease 3 years ago, I focused on creating a peaceful retirement. My modest home became my sanctuary, though neighbors noticed my military precision in everything from my neatly trimmed lawn to my punctual morning walks. I spent my days helping elderly neighbors with home repairs, driving them to appointments, or simply providing companionship. Mrs. Wilson, 85, particularly relied on me since her husband passed. Every Tuesday, I'd help her bring in groceries after the senior shuttle dropped her off. The community respected me, but few knew I commanded special operations teams in conflicts across 3 continents. Even fewer knew I'd specialize in dismantling enemy networks through strategic intelligence operations. That part of my life seemed distant now, until Karen Mitchell moved in. Karen Mitchell arrived at Oakwood Estates 6 months ago, her designer sunglasses perched on her head as movers unloaded expensive furniture. Within weeks, she'd muscled her way onto our HOA board. Within a month, she was president. Then came the changes. First, the security upgrades, cameras pointed at private properties rather than common areas. Next, the community safety initiative, requiring visitors to register. Finally, the uniforms appeared. Karen started wearing a black tactical outfit, with HOA security emblazoned across the back. A shiny badge, a metal baton, and a radio completed her costume. She began calling herself Chief Mitchell, patrolling in a black SUV with magnetic HOA enforcement signs. I noticed how she particularly targeted elderly residents, citing them for imaginary violations. When she detained a teenage boy for suspicious loitering, he was waiting for his grandmother. I should have spoken up. That was my mistake. Because on a Tuesday afternoon, as I helped Mrs. Wilson with her groceries, Karen's power trip went too far. The call came while I was changing a light bulb from Mr. Peterson across the street. "James, come quick. That horrible security woman is at my house." Mrs. Wilson's voice trembled with fear. I rushed over immediately. By the time I reached her driveway, Karen Mitchell was standing over Mrs. Wilson, who sat frightened on her porch steps, grocery bags scattered around her. This resident has failed to register her visitor, Karen announced into her radio, though no one was on the other end. She wore her full uniform, hand resting on her baton. "I'm not a visitor," I explained calmly. "I'm helping Mrs. Wilson with her groceries, as I do every Tuesday." Karen's eyes narrowed. "You need a visitor permit under HOA Security Code 5.3. I'll need to see identification." Mrs. Wilson tried to intervene. "James has been helping me for years. This is ridiculous." I began gathering the spilled groceries, deciding to de-escalate the situation. "Let's just get your groceries inside, Mrs. Wilson." That's when I felt Karen's hand grab my collar from behind. "You're being detained for questioning," she barked, yanking backward with surprising force. At 70, even with my military training, my balance wasn't what it once was. I fell backward awkwardly, my head snapping back as Karen continued pulling. The sickening crack was audible to Mrs. Wilson's caregiver, who had just opened the front door. Pain exploded through my neck and shoulders. Instantly, my legs went numb. As I lay on the concrete, Karen stood over me, still barking about security protocols, until neighbors rushed over. Someone called 911. The last thing I remember before losing consciousness was Karen speaking urgently into her phone. "Robert, we have a situation." The hospital diagnosis confirmed my worst fears. C3, C4 vertebrae fracture with spinal cord compression. The doctors couldn't tell if the paralysis would be permanent. Best case scenario, you're looking at months of rehabilitation. the neurosurgeon explained. Worst case. He didn't need to finish. Lying in that hospital bed, staring at the ceiling, something shifted inside me. The disciplined, strategic mindset I developed during my military career, the one I'd carefully packed away for civilian life, clicked back into place like a weapon being assembled. I made a call to David Miller, a former Army Ranger who'd served under my command before becoming an attorney specializing in personal injury law. "James," he said after I explained the situation, "this isn't just assault. If she was impersonating security personnel, that's a separate charge. And if the HOA enabled this behavior, they're liable too." I had spent my career identifying enemy vulnerabilities and developing strategic responses. Now, Karen Mitchell and her fake security force had become my new mission. The next morning, 2 uniformed police officers appeared outside my hospital room. The investigation had taken an unexpected turn, not in my favor. "Colonel Thompson," one officer said stiffly, "we received conflicting reports about yesterday's incident. Ms. Mitchell claims you became aggressive when she requested identification, and you fell during a justified citizen's detention attempt." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I was helping an elderly neighbor with groceries. The only aggression was when that woman grabbed me from behind and broke my neck. The officer shifted uncomfortably. "Ms. Mitchell has provided statements from witnesses saying you were belligerent and fell accidentally." From my hospital bed, I reached for my phone and showed them Mrs. Wilson's doorbell camera footage. Their expressions changed as they watched Karen grabbing me from behind, the unprovoked assault clear as day. "We'll need a copy of this," the senior officer said quietly, but I could tell something was off. That afternoon, a courier delivered a certified letter from Mitchell Legal Associates. Inside was a cease and desist order claiming I had been trespassing, that Karen had acted within her rights as HOA security director, and that any legal action would result in a countersuit. The letter was signed by Robert Mitchell, attorney at law, Karen's husband. Everything clicked into place. The officer's hesitation, the witness statements, the rapid legal response. The Mitchells had connections, and were using them to rewrite what happened. That night, as I lay immobilized in my hospital bed, I stared at the ceiling, thinking about my options. I might never walk again, and the woman responsible was trying to paint me as the aggressor while hiding behind her husband's legal shield. In that moment, the colonel in me took command. I made a series of calls from my hospital bed. By midnight, I had assembled a team, David, my attorney, Sarah Jenkins, a digital forensics expert who'd worked with my unit, Michael Ross, a private investigator and former intelligence officer, and 4 other veterans who lived in neighboring communities. "This isn't just about me anymore," I told them during our first strategy session in my hospital room. "Karen Mitchell is terrorizing an entire neighborhood with fake authority, and her husband is helping cover it up. We're going to expose them both." My team went to work immediately. Sarah collected security footage from every house near Mrs. Wilson's property. Michael began interviewing witnesses, discovering that Karen had established an entire fake security operation in the neighborhood. She had recruited and uniformed 5 deputies from the HOA board. They drove around in vehicles marked HOA security, issued fake citations, conducted stops of residents, and even set up a processing room in the HOA office. Elderly residents were afraid to leave their homes. A college student home for summer break had been handcuffed until his parents proved he lived there. A pregnant woman had been detained for suspicious behavior while simply taking her daily walk. The situation worsened when the HOA board sent an email announcing a system upgrade that would erase all security camera footage stored on neighborhood servers. They were covering Karen's tracks. Then came the bombshell. The board produced a community safety amendment, supposedly signed by all homeowners, granting the HOA reasonable powers of detention and inquiry. My signature was there, except it wasn't my signature. Someone had forged it. Looking at that forged document while lying in my hospital bed, unable to feel my legs, I made a decision. Karen Mitchell and everyone protecting her were going down, and I would use every skill I'd learned in 25 years of military service to make it happen. First, we secured the evidence. Sarah had already downloaded all neighborhood security footage before the HOA could erase it. She created multiple encrypted backups, ensuring the Mitchells couldn't bury what happened to me. The doorbell camera footage is damning, she told me. You can clearly see Karen grab you from behind without provocation, then continue pulling even after you start falling. David filed emergency motions for preservation of evidence and reported the document fraud to the FBI. Forging signatures on legal documents isn't just an HOA violation, he explained. It's criminal fraud that could put someone in federal prison. I knew legal channels might move too slowly, especially with Robert Mitchell pulling strings. We needed to bring community pressure to bear. From my hospital bed, I directed operations like I was back in the command center. We created a secure website where residents could anonymously upload security footage and report interactions with Karen. Within days, the site had dozens of videos showing her threatening behavior, destroying property during inspections, and even entering homes without permission. Michael dug deeper into Karen's background, discovering she'd been discharged in the Army for conduct unbecoming after attempting to impersonate military police. She'd previously been fired from a mall security job for exceeding her authority and physically detaining shoppers without cause. Meanwhile, my veterans team organized a meeting at the local library, carefully inviting residents who'd had run-ins with Karen's HOA security force. Nearly 60 people showed up, each with their own horror story of illegal detentions, fake citations, and intimidation by uniformed HOA members. A retired judge who lived on Maple Street examined our evidence and offered his expertise. This isn't just HOA overreach, it's criminal impersonation of security personnel, he said flatly. And these forged documents would be enough to disbar her husband and bring charges against everyone involved. A local news producer promised to investigate. Parents worried about their children's safety volunteered to form walking groups. For the first time, people realized they weren't facing Karen alone. Robert Mitchell must have sensed the tide turning. He called David, floating a settlement offer that would cover my immediate medical expenses in exchange for my silence. That's insulting. I told my team from my hospital bed, I might never walk again, and they think they could buy me off? We're going all the way. We declined the offer and escalated our campaign. We filed formal complaints with the state agency that regulates security personnel, the police department's internal affairs division, and the State Bar Association regarding Robert Mitchell's potentially unethical conduct. Then came the breakthrough we needed. The FBI confirmed that 20 signatures on the Community Safety Amendment were forgeries. 2 days later, 3 HOA board members resigned, claiming they'd been misled about the security program's implementation. The wall of protection around the Mitchells was crumbling. A local TV station ran our story in their evening news, interviewing Mrs. Wilson and showing the security video of my attack. The reporter also revealed Karen's history of military discharge and previous security guard incidents. Public pressure mounted. The real police, who had initially seemed reluctant to act, executed a search warrant at the Mitchell home in the HOA office, discovering an alarming cache of equipment. Security-style uniforms, fake badges, handcuffs, batons, pepper spray, a holding cell built in the HOA basement, forged credentials, and even replica police vehicles with working light bars. That same day, I received a call from a detective apologizing for the delay in their investigation. Political pressure, he admitted quietly. But that's over now. The next morning, as I struggled through my physical therapy exercises, my phone lit up with text messages from neighbors. Karen had been arrested, charged with aggravated assault, impersonating security personnel, and fraud. Robert wasn't far behind. The Bar Association opened an ethics investigation into his attempts to cover up his wife's crimes and his role in the document forgery. The remaining HOA board members voted to dissolve the security program and freeze all HOA funds pending audit. An emergency neighborhood meeting was called to elect new leadership. The real victory came 3 weeks after Karen's arrest. My surgeon entered my hospital room with the first genuinely hopeful expression I'd seen. The swelling is reducing better than expected, he said. Study my latest scans. We're seeing some promising nerve response in your lower extremities. For the first time since the attack, I was able to wiggle my toes. It was a small movement, but it represented something massive. Hope. Later that day, as I was struggling through lunch, there was a soft knock at the door. Mrs. Wilson stood there, tears in her eyes, supported by her caregiver. Behind her were neighbors, dozens of them, filling the hospital hallway, each holding a card or flowers. "We should have stood up sooner," Mrs. Wilson said, taking my hand. "But we're standing with you now." The community that had been terrorized into silence was finding its voice. 2 months later, Karen Mitchell pleaded guilty to all charges, including impersonating security personnel, aggravated assault, and criminal conspiracy. She received a 5-year sentence. Her husband and 4 HOA officers were also convicted for their roles in the fake security operation. The HOA was completely restructured with a new charter explicitly prohibiting any security activities. The settlement from the HOA's insurance company covered all my medical expenses and established a trust for my future care. Looking back, I realized I never had to use the combat skills from my Army days. Instead, I used something more important: how to build a team, gather intelligence, and create a strategy against a determined opponent. Today, I took my first steps with a walker. My neck brace is gone, and that power-hungry HOA president who thought she could break an old soldier? She learned too late that you should never underestimate a veteran who knows how to fight battles beyond the battlefield. Have you ever witnessed your community stand together against injustice? Share your thoughts in the comments and show some respect for those who served.